Oh, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Michael Wheel Show. I just got done watching the E3 conference that Sony just laid out, and oh my god, that is by far one of the best conferences I've ever seen in my personal life. And I can't say that I've been around for so long, but Jesus, I mean, that was just hit after hit, man. They just kept coming. I was super excited to see pretty much every title there, which was awesome. Then they laid out some really cool things that I didn't really see coming at all, and just kind of, you know, it took me a little bit by surprise, knocked me in the face there a little bit, but I enjoyed it. I enjoy the physical abuse that Sony has given me. It's phenomenal how many like wonderful, great games we've got coming on this year and next year. It's gonna be jam-packed. Now, I watched Microsoft's press conference this morning as well, and I went ahead and watched the Bethesda and the E3 conference, Bethesda and the Ubisoft conference as well. And I gotta say, hands down, Sony took the entire cake. If there was a cake that was baked, Sony was the one that was baking it, put all the icing on the top. I mean, it was fucking incredible. So, I mean, let's get down to it, and let's go through the list and see kind of why I personally believe that Sony pretty much crushed the competition at this E3 conference. I'm going to start off by saying that Microsoft, by far, probably had the second best conference. That's pretty much no comparison. Ubisoft started off super strong. They had a lot of pacing issues, dragging out a lot of different games and not really... their conference, I think 2.5 hours long, which was insane, and they really only needed to be up there for it, an hour is probably respectable. And same thing with Bethesda, just some small pacing issues, and the Dishonored 2, demo at the end was super long, even though I know people have been waiting for that game for a while. And by the way, Dishonored 2 looks phenomenal. But can we really jump on to Sony's conference? And I know a lot of people are going to be comparing it against Microsoft's conference. That's just the way that it goes. People are tired of it. Some people are all in for it. People are out for blood. Some people are enjoying the spectacle. But me, as what I do here on the internet, I gotta, have that in there. And there's gonna be that competition put up. So I'm more than happy to jump in as a referee and tell you guys my thoughts on what happened. So boom, round one, Microsoft comes out. I don't know what's going on with my hair right now. And basically, they're like, hey, we're coming in with a super strong conference. So Microsoft conference was all about, brevity, showing stuff in short, quick little bursts and making sure they kept everything rolling. They nailed the pacing that the other conferences, had failed to do. They showed a lot of games that we'd already seen before, which is not surprising. I'm sure they've got a little bit more in the pipeline, but as far as their first-party offerings, they were never as expansive as most of these other companies have to develop. They've got, a good amount of studios with them, but nowhere near the amount of studios that Sony, for example, has. But they showed the games that were their strongest. They picked a solid lineup, and that's what they were supposed to do, and they knocked it as far as they could. I guess my point to this is I don't think they could have done much better. They gave probably one of the better conferences that they could have revealed this year. They didn't really linger on too much stuff. They're far past that whole TV and video deal, so they're no longer going to be worrying about, getting, all that backlash that they had in the past couple of conferences. But the sweetest thing I guess I saw out of that conference, which everybody's probably going to be talking about, is the new hardware, which is interesting because generally I don't go for these conferences for hardware. I go for software, which is what Sony gave me, and that's why I think, ultimately in the end they kind of crushed it. But talking about Microsoft conference, they rolled out the new Xbox One S, which is a super sweet looking console. I mean, it's super slick. Reminds me a lot of the old PS2 design, which is cool. I'm a big PlayStation 2 guy. And they really kind of brought out some of the cooler, kind of cooler aspects of their controller. They did a small redesign, and now they're letting you customize your own controller and purchase it. You can engrave your own controllers. It ends up being $10 or $20 more depending on the options you throw on there. But it's a pretty solid deal. I honestly wish Sony had something like that because I'm super down to buy a custom DualShock 4 controller. That sounds awesome to me. But yeah, so I guess the strong point is that they've got models going for $299.99 of the Slim, and that's going to be with the 500 gigabyte version. And then they offer, I believe, $349.99 for the 1 terabyte, and I want to say $399.99 for the 2 terabyte version. So I know a lot of people were may or may not know that, the price differences between the varying sizes of storage. You're not going to be getting the 2 terabyte version for $299.99, because that kind of confused me when I saw that. I was like, that's a pretty ridiculous price for a brand new console that's got that's got all that space in there, which is really, kind of my main deal. I've been looking for space options for quite a while. So we had those, but then the biggest guy that came out and just smashed it was probably the Scorpio. This was a pretty brilliant move by Microsoft. It really kind of put Sony on their heels. Sony, came out a couple of days before the conference, said they weren't going to be talking about Neo, and Xbox ultimately comes out in the conference and does something that I think was super smart for them now. Now I want to jump on later on how this is going to affect them in the future, because I think Sony can still capitalize on the fact that Xbox, yet again, was the one that showed their hand, or at least part of their hand, first. Me personally, I never think it's a good idea to do that, because being able to react and change things behind the scenes is always going to be better than having to do 180s while you're already in the public eye. But for now, it really kind of made Sony kind of jump off the hype train for their own PlayStation Neo, because the specs that were at least hinted at and teased, they didn't really show much besides amazing pixels and 6 teraflops of power, which is some ridiculous amount of power in the GPU. You said that they would be able to handle 4K games, no problem. I know they're aiming 4K 60 FPS, but that'd be a really, really tight sell, especially for something that's supposed to be in the console space that they're trying to develop. But so you've got this Scorpio, this new Scorpio project, and I love the way they didn't announce the price. You'll notice. Which is smart of them. They shouldn't have, because that just gives Sony way more time to react and think about different strategies and stuff like that. And they didn't really show, they didn't show any huge images of the console, but they showed, they really just talked about the power and about how, I guess I heard some other people put it in this way, and this is kind of the way that I see it too. Microsoft kind of, at this point, and you can see through a lot of their statements in the past year or so, have admitted that Sony's pretty much won. This was their way of hitting the reset button, so to speak. They're really going to be, what this shows is that Microsoft has got all of this, They're pushing PS4's original success on the bridge, and with these new consoles and hardwares coming up, including the NX, including the Neo, including the Scorpio, they really want this to be the time where they can stop being the underdog, the underpowered system, the system with the least amount of exclusives and stuff like that. So they're going to be hammering home their exclusives. They're going to be hammering home if they do eventually make it the fact that they have the power advantage now, because Sony used that all towards the start of the launch of these consoles, which again, great move by them. Obviously, Sony's, sold more than double of their consoles, most likely at this point. So, the cool thing is Scorpio. The bad thing about Scorpio is this. These are my thoughts about always, because here's the deal. Whenever you've got a console that you're, or, not even a console, a big announcement like that, especially from companies that are really battling it out for sales and customers and stuff like that, being the person to first lay down, kind of the info can do one of two things. The first thing that it can do is put your opponent on the offensive, put your opponent on the defensive, because you've already established kind of where you're going, and I think that's what Microsoft did tonight, which was, again, that's what everybody, should be praising Microsoft for, is finally, for once, not being on the defensive from Sony, but really putting Sony on the defensive as far as these new consoles go, and starting all these rumors and kind of putting Sony back to the drawing board. The bad part is that it's putting Sony back to the drawing board. Sony hasn't released anything, nor do they really have any sort of impetus to release anything at all. They've never made any promises that this is going to release in this date, or that this is going to release for this price point. And because of that, they can go back to the drawing board and see, multiple ways. Now that they know what Xbox's vision is, they can, figure out ways to surpass it. Either, maybe a little bit less powerful hardware with a much cheaper price point that will, cause people to go for that one, or way more powerful hardware for the same price point. Those are two ways that I can see them kind of trying to R&D this and figure it out. But obviously it's a battle of titans, which is good for consumers, because it lets us watch and see whoever comes out in the end with, kind of the best product. Now, E3 for Sony. Gah! I mean, this is it. Make no mistake. This is really awesome. I have never been disappointed in a Sony conference. There's been some that, have had some of that bad pacing that we've been talking about. Most of the times when they like focus on, like partnerships that they have with like Disney and stuff like that, and they're showing off Skylanders and shit that I don't really care about. To be fair, I can't really judge, conferences by the things I care about and things I don't care about. But I think tonight, Sony's conferences was a huge win for gamers just in general. I just don't know how somebody as a gamer could sit through Sony's conference and not at least be, emotionally touched or affected by at least one of the games that they showed there, because they had it all. They had everything for everybody. One of the things that really kind of I caught on to while watching Microsoft's press conference was that a lot of their games, including the Gears of War game and I guess they had the Forza Horizon game, and all that jazz, but most of their games that had like voice actors in them, I was kind of a little bit taken aback by, in the sense that I didn't think they were that crazy good. Immediate thing that I noticed about Sony's conference was that every game pretty much nailed the voice acting, and I remember making some sort of comment about that, especially I think when the narration, like God of War was the first thing they announced, and I was like, just right off the bat, Sony just nails the voice acting in all their games. And, you can really look at the history of the companies and the games that they developed. Microsoft has always been, much less of a story, oriented or focused, and more on, like, the multiplayer and the fun side and being able to chat with your party, like, yourself. And Sony, historically has always been, more of, like, on the on the RPG side, on the loads of dialogue, on lots of voice acting, lots of stories. Their best rated titles are Uncharted, The Last of Us, God of War, and they're all story oriented titles, mostly single player, deals. And The Last of Us, one of the most awarded games in history, is a straight story mode game, which is great. I think it really speaks to the differences of games and how they can be different. But that's honestly most of the time why I love Sony. I love the PlayStation device so much. I grew up with it most of these times. I myself am very much a story-oriented gamer, and I really do love RPGs and really do love delving into deep, amounts of dialogue and lore, and that's why I tend to stick with this side. But all biases aside, either way, the show was phenomenal. And the first thing they did was they set up the stage in a beautiful way. They went into their old the old place where they used to record, their E3 presentations, and, it's a phenomenal auditorium, super massive, and it's got, it's just really classy. It's just a fine, classy place where you would just, take a champagne, a tuxedo, a little bow tie, take your girl with you, got a nice little silk dress on, you guys got the white gloves and everything. That's what it feels like to me. I love it. Just, Microsoft always has that kind of, cutting edge glass, technology kind of deal, and Sony just kind of classed it up, and I find myself much more of an old school classy guy, so this is just something that another little notch, a little check mark off the list, which was great. But I think the first thing that blew me away was obviously the live score orchestra. If you guys watch my channel, all you know that I do like to play music, and I do like to write my own music, and listening to composers or something I do on my free time, and it's just beautiful what went on there. I mean, that was, for me personally, I feel like this was just targeted directly at me. That was the most beautiful thing that they could have done, and really just kind of set a bar that I hadn't seen before for these performances. They just went an entirely different route. Sony kind of makes their own path through these things, and they always show up really strong because they have the IP to do it, and they've got the balls to do it, and they got the push and the know-how to do it. So just this beautiful live orchestra that was doing live soundtracks to the games throughout the entire press conference. And we'll get on to one of my most emotional parts of the conference, where it brought tears to my eyes, and that never would have happened were it not for that live orchestra. So number one, main props as to why Sony won E3 is the live orchestra. Number two, as much as I like to praise Microsoft for keeping their showings brief, they showed a lot of hardware, and they ended up talking about different things. Not a bad thing, but when you take a showing that's about games and hardware and services and stuff like that, updates to the Xbox console, and you take one that's just purely about really good games, I'm always going to pick the really good games one. And that's just me as a gamer. I think that speaks to a lot of gamers out here. As much as we like, playing with the new tech, we're not tech guys, we're game guys. We love video games, and that's what we're here for first and foremost. The tech, you can give that to me in a news conference briefing in some other area, or you can just let me know, online through Twitter. I'm not really in it to look at the new tech. I'm here to play the games, and the tech helps, obviously. But that was just the first thing I noticed about Sony's conference, is they were just boom, 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 games. And they didn't show like CGI trailers, they showed gameplay, like extended gameplay at the games that we're going to be playing. And these games are not, far off, albeit probably Kojima's titles, a long way off. I'm not quite sure why. Well, I guess I do know why they had that, but it was interesting they put that in there, because that game's not going to be seen for the next 3 to 4 years, is my main guess. But they just had game after game after game, and they showed all this gameplay of games that are coming out like 2017. I think every game they showed here is going to be a 2017 title, if not a 2016 title. So these are games that we're going to be playing within this next year, which is awesome to think about, because that's how it should be done. You don't hype games that are going to be shown, 10 years in advance. It's the same thing, same reason why, there was no Elder Scrolls at the E3 conference this year with Bethesda, because Elder Scrolls is not going to come out until like 2020, as much as that stabs me in the heart to say. But my god, I mean, so games, all gameplay, all games that are fresh and relevant to this year, unique and original IP, not rehashes of like old content. It's not Uncharted 5, it's not, Gears of War 4. No, to be fair, Gears of War looks pretty sweet, although I was really bummed by the voice acting. The gameplay seemed a little bit slow, and I wasn't too impressed, but I've never been a huge fan of Gears of War, so the fans that are, kudos to them. I hope they enjoy that game quite a bit. But it was just, really superbly set up for them to be able to just crush home what their strongest point is, which as great as Sony is in the hardware game, coming up with the PS4 and a super slim edition with lots of graphic and processing power, able to beat out the Xbox at a lower price point. Those are all strong suits of Sony as a corporation, because they do lots of hardware, and they do have lots of strong points in the movie business as well. So being able to hold on to rights for things like Spider-Man, and bring that into the whole deal, those are all strong points they use. But their strongest point is their history of games. They've been in this gaming thing for longer than Microsoft ever has been, and they've got things to show for it. They've got things that are beloved and franchises that people really look forward to, and they've got a lot of skills in developing story-based games that are really, I think, what are at the heart of the whole experience. So let's go through, what they showed off. I mean, first of all, God of War, phenomenal. I mean, that game looks amazing. If you played any, the other God of War series, games, that's an iconic series. It's something that it's just, it. If you're a gamer, you've known it, you've played it, somebody that's played it. That's just one of the staples of the action adventure genre. It came up, with the bloody, gory gameplay with the quick time events and stuff that games like Darksiders and other games started, copying. Like, it was the progenitor of a genre of like hack and slash, which is great. So more God of War, but the greatest thing I saw about this is that it's really changed its tone into a much more mature tone, which I love. I mean, they obviously up the graphics, the game looks beautiful, but they really, like, even with the way, they set up the shots, even with the way they did the voice acting, it's a little bit slower pace now, which I like. I mean, I really like how they're keeping it fresh, and they're not trying to hammer on just more and more of the same shtick, because I'm kind of, I'm not a huge fan of series that, just kind of go on forever and never die out. So this was a really nice, bold move for Santa Monica and Sony themselves. So you've got that. They showed a ton of other titles. So they showed Detroit, which I'm super excited for. This is a game from Quantic Dreams, which are the same people that made like Heavy Rain. Super story focused, but they give you those alternate paths and different endings and stuff like that. So the way that they showed it was just awesome. Like, I don't know, that game looks really, I got way more excited for that game during this press conference than I did when they showed it last time. I mean, it looked cool last time, don't get me wrong, but when they showed the gameplay this time, and they actually showed what you were doing, and they showed a new android character that we may be playing, and they showed these split paths and stuff like that, it was just really cool. And on another side note, I just think it was super awesome how Sony, managed to go pretty much the entire conference by having like 2 people up. They didn't bring out game developers and let's talk about the game and let's sit on a couch and chat about the game and let's have an interview about the game and tell me these different things and how this does. Like, they just played trailers, and they did that because they know that the games speak for themselves. You don't need anybody out there to say. They had like Sean Layton and Andrew House, and that's it. And then they had Hideo Kojima at the end. That's it. Like, their whole conference was just jam-packed, sweet, and just straight to the point. And this is by far kind of one of the most perfect E3 conferences I've ever seen. Not only that, they've got a propensity, at least in these last 2 years, to be able to pull out the games that we have been dreaming about. Last year it was Last Guardian, Shenmue 3, Final Fantasy 7 remake, and this year you've got the Crash Bandicoot HD collection coming out. You got the Last Guardian dated for October. I mean, my heart just exploded when I saw that. So let's talk a little bit about my teary moment, and that was when it happened. Was when the Last Guardian was announced and they were showing the gameplay and the live orchestra was behind it, and there was just, with none of these conferences and none of these other people, the reason why it really hits home for me and why I really think Sony understands games on a unique, like, emotional level as opposed to, like, a technical level. To me, like, Microsoft always seems to be reacting to things. They always seems to be very reactionary in the way that they produce and create their games. It's always like, what's the thing that people are enjoying right now? Or what's the thing that, that we've seen good sales in, and what's the tones that people are enjoying at the moment? But Sony seems to, instead of being reactionary, be very, proactive. They're always the people that are like, they create their own stories and we follow them as gamers because of that. And like I said, they understand games on a very much on a story base, on a gameplay base, on a very emotional basis, which is awesome. They always have those small moments between characters. They always have those really great soundtracks to back up games. They always know how to, they always have all these dedicated studios like Naughty Dog, like Sony Japan Studios, like the Team Ico that's, making The Last Guardian, stuff like that. And they always work with really good people. When they do Capcom, you get Street Fighter and you get Resident Evil 7 out of it. When you get, when they work with From Software, they get Bloodborne out of it and Demon Souls, and just some of the best games like I've ever played in my life have come straight, from Sony's understanding of games. So this conference really reflected how much that Sony seems to understand and how to make these games, and that's why this conference, and it's definitely a personal bias of mine because I've grown up with PlayStation games, and I played PlayStation so many times. All these games are much nearer and dearer to me than, say a franchise like Halo is. But this is the only conference I ever see myself going like, oh my god, or like pumping my fist in the air because I'm so excited about what just happened, or like, I literally tearing up when Last Guardian came with my hands just like this. I was just like, oh my god, are they doing it? Like, I've never really felt that feeling of like, yeah, like you just fucking knocked that out of the park. And that's the feeling that keeps me gaming. That's the feeling that makes me love video games as an art form and as, a piece of entertainment and as a thing that people create. I mean, that is what I fucking live for. And that's what I felt all throughout this conference. I was just, yeah. And music plays a big part of that to me as well. Sony, just with that live orchestra, is such a brilliant move. I mean, hearing the Star Wars theme out of a live orchestra, hearing The Last Guardian, play over a live orchestra, hearing Horizon's theme, over a live orchestra, it was just like, fuck, yes, you get it. You understand what makes these games just amazing. So let's speak about Horizon, my most anticipated title, of last year's E3 showing. I would have handpicked that out of all the titles that were revealed at last E3. As much as I love The Last Guardian, Horizon is fresh, and it's something that we didn't know about before. Last Guardian, I'm very, very excited for. But Horizon, like, holy shit, it looks like it's got an enormous map. It looks like it has classic RPG elements. I don't know if you guys are aware, but they took a lot of talent from different studios like CD Projekt Red, the people that created The Witcher, from Obsidian, some of the creators, the writers of Fallout, New Vegas. Some of the most famed and inspired people from all these different studios. They got Guerrilla, which, they're an impressive studio in their own right. They pioneered the Killzone franchise, which, has some pretty amazing, animations, pretty amazing, visuals, and pretty amazing storylines. And they got all this powerhouse together, and they've been creating a game for the last, 4 or 5 years, and I'm so excited to see that happen. One more thing, I'm going to jump on one of the ways that I jumped out of my chair during Sony's conference was when God of War, at the end there, the dragon started flying by. I was like, fuck yes. Oh my god. It's like Skyrim in third person. Like, I was just going out of my mind. So you got games like Detroit and Horizon, and now you've got games like God of War. They showed a lot of really cool, like, VR is something I've always been excited for. I know a lot of people have been a little wary of it, and I suppose I have too, but VR is something I've dreamed about as a kid. Being able to be inside a video game is by far, the experience that I've wanted to have. And seeing VR just, like, explode, like, this conference showed VR the way that it was supposed to be shown. Like, I was a little wary coming in about how they were going to show off different VR titles and stuff like that, but then boom. I mean, they gave me a reason to buy VR. They throwed out Resident Evil 7. They throwed out and like fully playable on the PlayStation VR. They threw out the Batman VR, which looks sweet. They threw out Star Wars VR. Like, it's no longer these tiny little kid experiences or these tiny little like Eagle Flight multiplayer, you know, experiences. It's very much like real backing from real developers like, you know, Rocksteady Studios and Capcom, and, you know, 50 plus games in development, you know, available day one for when it releases in October. Like, these are the kinds of things that I'm make me want to buy a PlayStation VR. So they did their job. So basically, Sony wins. Sony wins hand down. And you guys, you know, obviously can discuss in the comments below. This is obviously an opinion piece of mine, but I feel like a lot of people share the same sentiment. I know a lot of people may disagree for other reasons. But the reasons to me why Sony just destroyed this conference is a complete, you know, awareness and understanding of what gamers want, what they, you know, gamers' emotions, what they feel like, and what we've been asking for. Which, to be fair, Microsoft has been very, very, very good about, you know, being able to read what we've been asking for, but in a way that seemed very like very focused on the video games that we know and love. You know. You know, I mean, I guess the last thing I want to say is Sony Bend's studio that came out with, I want to say Days Gone or something like that. One of theirs, the new zombie title from them that also looks super, super sweet. I got super excited for that game because that, you know, that studio has been quiet for a very, very long time, and now they're finally releasing, you know, something we've all been kind of waiting for. And, you know, you've still got Sucker Punch working on some unknown title. You still have all these studios that they have. Not Quantic Dream. Media Molecule still working on Dreams, and there's all sorts of titles like Persona 5, you know, third party that weren't even shown at this conference. I expect to see a lot of that at the PlayStation Experience conference, but it's like Sony doesn't need to have sleeves because they've got so many of the cards already on their side that they can just lay them out. If that makes any sense. Like, they do have stuff hidden up their sleeves, but for the most part, they hold so many really great IPs, and they know how to use them so masterfully, and they've got the skills and the talent with the developers to just knock them out of there. Like, I really can't see PlayStation doing, you know, much wrong unless they come into some wrong footing with this PlayStation Neo deal, which could totally happen. But now that Microsoft kind of put that first foot forward, now they've got all the reason to go back and figure out what they need to do to get back on top of that. So again, I've just got all of the kind of hope for PlayStation as a brand, because now they've got everything they need at this point to just coast through these next, you know, 2 years with just exclusive after. So this is right after they released Uncharted 4, one of the best games I've ever played in my life, by the way. So Sony knocks it out of the park. This is my personal opinion, but, you know, they really brought on just an epic show as far as a presentation with the live orchestra, with the auditorium that they showed, with not having as many game developers and stuff up there, and just smashing in games in our faces. You know, giving praise to one of the best game developers of all time, Hideo Kojima, and his studio. I don't expect his game to be out soon, really at all. But I think it's really cool how they propped him up on the stage and they showed, hey, we're PlayStation and this is Hideo Kojima and it's us. Like, we have Hideo Kojima and we're going to throw him out on the stage because this is how much we value him, and we're putting everything behind his title because he's, you know, quite honestly a visionary in the games. You know, he created Metal Gear Solid, one of the best game franchises of all time, completely a brainchild of his. So I'm expecting nothing but good things out of his title. And Sony just propped that out on stage at the end. It was just like a salt in the wound for everybody else at that conference. It's very exciting. I was very excited. I liked it. I liked the show a lot. It really was super emotional, and they showed me what I wanted. Just the games that I'm going to be playing in this next year, why they're awesome. Showed me God of War, showed me games that I was, you know, really into. There's not much that was really missing. You know, I'm expecting PSX. We're going to be shown a lot of other, you know, good deals and stuff like that, but for now, I'm sure I'm missing some sweet title that I didn't get to talk too much about. The VR stuff looked awesome. To be honest, Call of Duty looked awesome. I've always been a fan of their campaigns, although I don't like how, you know, their brevity. I don't like how short they are. But it looked sweet, man. I mean, I'm all in for Battlefield. I'm a huge fan of World War I and you know, less modern history and having shooters in that era. Like, I was a big fan of the old school Call of Duties as well, so I'm gonna be playing a lot of that game. But you know, Call of Duty's super intrigued me with the way that they're going, even though I'm not as into the futuristic setting. And I think it was a smart move not throwing the logo out until the end of the video and just, you know, being like, this is it, and having people go, I wonder what this game is, this looks super cool, and then be like, Call of Duty, so people can kind of stop the hate bandwagon, but there's no reason to go on a love bandwagon either. Just, you know, make up the decision for yourself if this is the kind of game for you. For me, it's not really going to be my type of game, but I was impressed by it, absolutely. And Modern Warfare, 30 days first on PlayStation, impressed by it. Resident Evil, head over heels for that game. I've been waiting for that for a long time. Biohazard, you know, anyway, it's super sweet. I've gone on for a half hour talking about their conference. But to me, Sony, just at the end of the day, has the studios and development talent and knows and understands what we as gamers, you know, like and love, and how to pull on our heartstrings. You know, they've got so much talent at these studios, and they've got a really good chess mind for outplaying Microsoft. You know, at the end of the Microsoft conference, I was like, there's no way anybody can beat Xbox's conference this year. And again, Sony just kind of outplayed it. They know what to show, when to show it, and PlayStation experience this year is probably going to be no less of a punch. So congratulations to Sony. Congratulations to Microsoft, man. They're still kicking it really strongly, and they've got new hardware coming up that Sony's going to have to contend with. They got really good, strong, you know, titles showing. They've got a really smart business plan going forward. I just think, you know, Sony just happens to always be 2 steps ahead of the game, so we'll see where their head's at as far as that goes. And then, you know, props to Ubisoft. They had a nice showing. I just wish they could have compressed a lot of that content. I'm excited for a lot of their games as well. And Bethesda as well. EA, you know, had a little bit of a poorer showing, but again, you know, everybody's got games to show, and everybody's got a way to do it. There's still more E3 to come, so, you know, keep it here on the Mecha Will channel. I'll be doing some updates, especially on individual games, on, you know, my reactions and what I like, and my discussions on different kinds of content. And as E3 rages on, we'll be having a lot more, you know, games to talk about. I'm still looking for some sort of Square Enix Nier Automata, you know, coming out. I've been super interested in more RPG-like games. I really thought From Software would have something, maybe a Bloodborne 2 or something this year, but they didn't. But yeah, anyway, thanks guys for stopping by. This has been Mecha Will. If you liked the video, I really appreciate the thumbs up. It helps my channel out, especially as a smaller YouTuber. And if you want to see more content from me, you know, subscribe always helps as well. So if you want to jump on and join the rest of the Mech Army, which is what I call the rest of my followers, then I'm here for you, and I'll be releasing content on the daily. So thank you guys for dropping by, and I hope to see you next show.